Welcome to Inside Prediction Markets. We've got a great guest today, but we're going to start with the three stories we noticed in prediction markets this week. And, me and Chris can't help ourselves. We always gravitate towards Twitter drama. This week, it was Matt Kalish, a co-founder of DraftKings, completely crashing out on Twitter about kalshi. I think he just woke up one day this week and realized that his equity in DraftKings had plummeted and kalshi was eating his lunch. He got really angry.
So
he's thrown every criticism in the world at the company. Go ahead, Chris.
I think it's very funny if you see, I got this from, I'll shout out Porter of BA Analytics. He was in a group chat of mine. He posted this, that a lot of the shares that Kalish has have been like, he's putting them up for like a loan or an equity. Like he has to file with the SEC. So like he filed. I linked something in the chat the other day. It was May 18th. He's like borrowing against his equity, in DraftKings. So I think this is exactly that. The timing is almost spot on. He's like, oh shit, like why do I have so much less money than I used to have? This sucks. And then just completely went after everyone. Look, it could be two coincidences, but it's just funny. You can see the SEC filings there. It's like it's May 18th and May 15th. So
the post that started all of this off, I would say that you and I actually kind of sort of mostly agree with, right? Which was he posts a PGA Championship outright on Brooks Koepka where there's a lot of slippage when he puts in $1,000. And he says, why is it 93 to 1 if you bet $10 and 38 to 1 if you bet 1,000 on something? And, I think this does speak to the broader truth that prediction markets are sophisticated products. They don't clean up the experience for you like a regulated sportsbook does. And a lot of people do get turned off by stuff like this. They feel like they're getting exploited. Now, as many people pointed out, nobody with 3 brain cells is allowed to bet $1,000 on a golf outright on DraftKings, right? Like, what are we talking about? In fact, I think brand new accounts, 30K payouts are like a hard limit when you go to a trader review. So it's a little disingenuous on his part. And then there were all these follow-up criticisms like, okay, you're trading against Wall Street killers. It's impossible to win. But also they would have no idea what lines to put up if it wasn't for DraftKings putting lines up. There's some contradictory angles here. But it really consumed everybody's feed, I think, all week and doesn't show any signs of slowing down.
Extremely entertaining. And it's also hilarious that his name is basically Kalshi, just with a little bit different. Like, I'm going to call him Matt Kalshi from now on. It's so funny. But
fun detail.
What I don't understand is I disagree that the product is so far away. Like, I look at like our product and I think Novig is pretty good. Like I don't think it's that much different than like his baby DraftKings or FanDuel or whatever. And Kalshi has some issues. They didn't really start out with sports in mind, which is why it's probably not there yet. But to say it's 2 to 3 years away is pretty ridiculous in my opinion. And I bet you when we go to, assuming we're able to get the DCM license, we're able to get it, I suspect that we'll be doing just fine, and a lot of people will enjoy our product just as much as a regular OSB. So disagree with him there. What I do agree that it's, I thought is also his point on creator IDs was also for RFQ was also somewhat valid. Like, you can't say it's, they don't kick out winners when people are using creator IDs to kick out winners. Like, that is a little hypocritical. But like, it's also hypocritical coming from him where their whole business model is kicking out winners. So like, he probably needed a better messenger to like go after it, because no one takes him serious when it's like, that's all they do is kick out winners.
All right, next story. Sporttrade announces they're suspending operations in OSB. Everybody's going to pull their money out. And what we've all concluded is that this means they feel really good about getting designated as a DCM. They're expecting to launch their regulated prediction market soon. Sporttrade, one of the OGs in the exchange space, has operated as like a regulated OSB product in a few states for years and years. So this will be kind of interesting to see if they can pull this off, because I think they had some momentum. They lost a little steam as sweeps exchanges and PMs became kind of the new hot thing. But there's a lot of smart, capable people there. There's a lot of really good infrastructure, and it sounds like they have a product on the way.
Yeah. I don't know how. There's only one of two takes. One, they're toast and they're going to shut down and they're dead, or they're getting designated. Feels like the latter is more likely.
All right, and you want to do number 3 for us?
Yeah. So I need you to explain this to me because they, you know, Polymarket and Nasdaq announced today that they're going to be offering individual like perps on stocks. But what I don't understand is is this not just options? I'm not sure I fully understand this. Maybe I'm too stupid to grasp it. This is why I needed someone smart like you to explain this to me, Henry.
No, I'm definitely also stupid on this topic, but I mean, perps are the most popular contract for BTC, right? And it lets you trade up, down directionally without owning a bunch of the asset. And I think this decision or this product coming out from Polymarket and Kalshi corresponds with a impending decision about whether or not you can offer contracts on stock prices without like explicit permission from the business entity itself. Like there's some legal issues around whether or not you can offer these contracts that seem to be breaking in favor of the prediction markets right now. So I can file this under like new financial products on PMs that actually have real world applications, which we've talked about before, right? The reality is the most likely non-sports markets to succeed on PMs are things that have real financial impact and that market makers are actually super good at pricing. So they feel good putting huge size on, and pricing equities is a big strength of your, Wall Street bigwigs.
So if someone is listening to this and an expert in this, please DM me or Henry or comment something. We'd probably love to have you on the show to explain this. But how is this different than options? I mean, they have 0-day options on SPY. Yes, I know most options are going to be expiring every Friday or every 2 Fridays for like most individual stocks. But I just don't understand how this is. That's the whole point of an option. You don't own the underlying. You can trade the the up down call or a put. I'm really not following how this is any different. And I guess it's a little cleaner if you can do it over 15-minute window or an hour window. But this just seems like an option in a different way. I don't get it at all.
Coming up next in the Optic Odds Hot Seat, we have our close friend Zach from 4casters.
Zach, welcome to the Optic Odds Hot Seat. Thanks for joining us. Zach, who has made, I guess, 1 or 2 exchanges, to however you want to think about it, but he's very big in the space. I believe they almost did $1 billion in volume last year, so that's pretty cool. But thanks, Zach, for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And just to start off, I want to correct you. Sweepstakes is not an exchange. So we have one exchange and one sweepstakes. But yeah, I appreciate it. We've been in the space for a while, and notice I like that you didn't call it a prediction market because it's a.
I know it's not a prediction market. Yes.
Important to keep track of all these things. So the exchange is 4casters. The sweeps product is 4CX. I've known Zach since I've been working on Novig. He's always been a resource to me, and I've always been impressed by what they've done. Basically, I think you've bootstrapped the entire journey, right? Have you guys ever raised outside capital?
So we raised money in 2019 from Jump to do a Polymarket style on-chain prediction market that mostly focused on sports. It's like $70,000 at the time, but we got them really excited. But ultimately, we weren't the right people for that product. We didn't really know how to do smart contract stuff, and we kind of hit a wall there. But we kind of, we were talking up, got him really excited, and the founder of Jump actually came down, and he was like, he heard our pitch and he's like, "This is terrible. You guys got to go figure out what you're doing." So we simplified it a lot, and over the course of 3 years, we tried to figure out what the problem was that we were actually solving, and that didn't require any money, right? It was just me and my best friend Adam, and we were just like, man, if we could make $4,000 a month to move out of our parents' house, that would be freaking awesome, right? So you kind of look back at how this whole space evolved, like Polymarket, Kalish, they started around the same time. I think Kalish raised 30 million, Polymarket started out raising 4 million. We were trying to make $4,000 a month. And at some level in the short term, it shows, where we ended up, where we are today. We probably doubled every year, approaching about $1 billion in volume, but we haven't hit that kind of, viral big moment. We're still kind of a place where really sharp bettors bet against each other with, specifically sports, low fees, easy interface, and things that professional bettors care about.
So Zach, you were telling me at Bet Bash last year that this started because there was a group chat and there's a bunch of sharps. Is that true, or were you just blowing smoke up my, last Bet Bash? Because it sounds different. It sounds different than when you're describing. It sounds like Jump was it, but there wasn't was there a group chat?
Yeah.
Or what? Okay.
Well, what you have to understand, I guess, is there's different layers of the story. So when we started in 2017, right, 2018, at first we're like, oh, it would be sick to be on the dark net as like a Bitcoin betting exchange. Like, that'd be awesome. We just kind of talking about whatever. And then we kind of originally sold the story of, all right, 2018 smart contracts are happening, and this is kind of enabling. This is before Perps, so we were working on this. So it's like, oh, there's no custody of the funds. It's all users. Like, we kind of instantly got why that would create potentially a regulatory opportunity to bring sports betting and just general, peer-to-peer betting to the U.S. in some capacity. But we didn't really know how to code or do anything, right? And so we kind of, hadn't really even done a startup, so didn't really know how to build that product. It's exceptionally hard, Ethereum, and 2018 to navigate as well. But when I talked about the private group chat that started on Telegram, that was in like 2020. So like there's like 3 years of us trying to build something for so long. But yeah, it did start that way. We kind of realized that a lot of the largest bettors today are already connected. And this was true in 2020. They were just texting on Telegram like, hey, I want the Bucks +7. Someone just matches the other side. And we were like, well, there's a lot of problems with just having 60 guys in a group chat doing that. And so that's kind of how 4casters today was born out of.
People try to estimate like the total volume of sports betting that is like offshore and unregulated. But I would really love to know, and there's no way to know, how much of it is literally just on credit, people like DMing each other. Because obviously it's not a lot of transactions, but that's where the huge size happens, right? That's where you like get 50 down on something, just, hand wave it away. We have a tab going. We'll never really know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like a small ecosystem because it's pretty hard to break into that.
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned, a lot of it is on credit. So somebody's basically got to be like, oh yeah, Henry, he's good for 250,000. And then they're like, do you really know Henry? And it's like, what do I stand to gain? And so that kind of ecosystem is pretty closed off, as just so I'm sure as it is with like any other kind of industry. So I don't know. And it's not like an insane money, in my opinion, is moving through there. I think people like SIG or like the big institutions would rather use a kalshi than like, just some random like guy in like Canada that they like text and like, So I think like as prediction markets become more regulated, I think that it's not going to expand that brokerage side, in my opinion.
I want to go back to something you said at the start, which is that you guys have grown like doubling year over year pretty consistently, which is awesome. And that you're still primarily a space where sharps trade against sharps. It's high information. We'll say like high info users, right? Because obviously not everybody can win. The traditional wisdom is that you need a lot of recreational inflow to support an exchange. Why do you think you guys have been able to grow without, I won't say with zero recreational inflow, but with less than a kalshi or, a big consumer product with a marketing brand? And do you think that you have a much higher ceiling on that? And can you explain why that's possible?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think of it kind of like a brokerage style thing where you'll have two types of people who really want to bet on like, OKC and the Spurs are a great example, right? So, there's a lot of people that like OKC, and there's a lot of different type of people who like the Spurs, right? And there's always going to be a need to connect those two users who want to get a good price and bet against each other. And to that point, like, how many people have someone they can just text and be like, hey, I want the Spurs for 50K at Novig, or Big Free, I should say. So it's kind of like this, and regarding how big that is, I don't think that's a massive thing. Like, we'll probably do like $1 billion this year of traded volume, less of risk win. And I think that the cap of that is, I don't know how much higher. Like, maybe you could pitch double to me if you got like, a bigger institution in. But I think like you really have this, this situation that happens is sharps generally, like, there's a sharp side and a square side in a lot of spots. Even if though, there's like a, how can I put it? Like a sharp side, like if I bet that early and it moves here, like maybe somebody will want it here, but I'll want to lay off there. So to put it kind of simply, people are always going to want to trade at low fees, even if, there's not a ton of squares.
But okay, that's fair. But if I'm trading it and I don't want a position, and if I say, okay, I want OKC, and then like a very well, like say, a well-known like Harlebop, like a very known NBA bettor says, oh, I want the other side. I don't want OKC anymore. I
Yeah, but you don't know that you're betting against Harlebop. You could just be betting
fair.
against some guy who has a book in Canada who wants to lay off a lot of, Spurs action.
That's a good
don't know
point.
your
The layoff,
counterparty.
laying off risk piece is interesting, because you could conceivably see like a thing that happens on Kalshi, for instance, very high fee, very wide tick. People will get in there early and put up size because they want to get a queue, and you might say, okay, I'm gonna post more size that I'm comfortable with because this is my only opportunity to post it all is if I get in early, which means I need to have an option to lay off risk later, right? It's like Chris, for instance, has 2.5 million riding on OKC right now. He may, in order to get that kind of size far in advance, be like, well, part of my strategy here is I know I have low vig options later on if I need to take advantage of them. So do you think the rise in prediction markets lifts your tide, so to speak, because you might have, plus like combined with AI and the fact that people can vibe code and integration to forecasters a lot faster than they could a few years ago, do you think that creates the opportunity for you to draw in more of that kind of, minus EV hedging risk from informed players? Is that part of the value prop?
Yeah, I think so for sure. We've definitely benefited from prediction markets, kind of the more money flowing around, the more use there is for different platforms. How is your business model going to adjust going from sweeps, play money to, CFTC real money?
Well, Chris and our group is going to be fully separate.
Okay.
Just so there's like I said, we're mostly just going to be focused on trading and trading everywhere. And, with incentives to kind of maximize liquidity and user experience on Novig. And then everywhere else, the incentive is more just like profit generation and signal generation to affect pricing on the main
Gotcha.
platform.
And you guys aren't going to be allowed to see the flow,
Of course
and it's
not.
just going to be like a separate.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. It's firewall. That'd be like very, very illegal. So definitely can't do that.
Yeah.
Is this something you guys have picked around looking at?
Well, I mean, my theory on prediction market is you guys are in a good position to do it. I don't want to be the 25th prediction market. So we're kind of like zagging when everyone else is zigging. That's kind of my mindset on this whole space. Like, I don't really want to be a follower here. I mean, it makes sense for you guys. I think you guys could realistically win, but we have to go into, the kind of context where what's a situation, how does the game progress where we could win? And I don't see, if prediction markets are up only, like we kind of just have to accept like, all right, we're probably not going to be able to carve out a lane in up only prediction markets right now. However, I would price that at like 50-50. Maybe people have different opinions, but we'll see what, how it shakes out in 2 years when the Democrats probably win back the presidency, what what happens there. But I mean, I would price it like 50-50. So if it lands on tails, everybody in the space is incentivized to play as it's going to land on heads. But if it lands on tails, I would like to be well positioned where, I don't think federal sports betting will not exist in 10 years in some ways. It's just a question of what it looks like and what the actual time.
Have you seen the true American hero and patriot, Michael Selig? I don't think it's 50-50. I think it's 95-5, maybe even more. I mean,
yeah, I think it really just takes, a question of, if the Dems get power and, how that shakes out as like kind of a revenge thing. And we're talking about just a blip, right? So like a year or two without sports or a year or two with kind of certain sports markets being restricted. I think that's more what I mean, basically where the flow gets interrupted.
See, what's very interesting to me is everyone says, okay, if the Dems take power, that it's bad. That's a general take. But if you think about it, Republicans have always been the party of states' rights. And it's very interesting that they're the ones pushing, or seemingly pushing this forward, where Dems have always been, they want a more centralized and bigger government. So I'm not so sure that Dems being power is going to be, a death knell or losing the coin flip.
I think prediction markets are not popular right now. Like among like average people, and the kind of casinofication of everything is like a very easy point to push back. And I also think this whole notion of, it's prediction markets, it's not gambling, is rubbing people the wrong way because it's disingenuous. And I think like these are going to be popular things that people would like the average person, like to curtail this back. And I think it's like going to be a platform that, will probably be pushed because everything has happened so fast. And I also think like the Republican Democrat thing matters a lot less when, Trump's son is on the board of both of the two main companies.
That's very fair. That's a very fair criticism.
So they've kind of already aligned with the Republicans in some way. Like if they want to say fuck you to Trump, and they would kind of fuck with the prediction markets. But like I said, I mean, we can disagree about the number. It doesn't really matter. It'll shake out how it shakes out. But ultimately, I'm playing on the no side hitting, and then that's how we can kind of make some headwinds, I feel like. So
well, with respect,
that's my mindset.
With respect, I hope you lose the flip.
It's meant to be. It's meant to be.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's cool.
What about on the trading side? Are you guys doing any execution yourself on any other platforms, or do you strictly say we're managing our own exchange? We don't get into owning risk.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we partner with people who, like, let's just say they have a model or something that they want to do, and we kind of act as like a tech solution for that, if that makes sense. Obviously, the trickiest thing in this space right now is how you get liquidity and how you get unique liquidity.
Right.
Because we're kind of just entering this era, because, I mean, we've been doing it since 2021. There was no incentive for anybody to build like an automated market making bot in 21, 22, 23, maybe starting 2024. So we're kind of still in the very early stages where it's finally making sense for people to make bots. But yeah, we've always helped make bots for people. That's kind of our lane. So we kind of sit in between, I would say, where we're not directly like, hey, we like the Thunder, like we're gonna shade the price to the Thunder and do this to the Thunder. But we have like a tool that allows people to like take the Thunder, kind of combine books and do different things like that.
It's funny because I think about RFQ when you say that comment, where it's like, when it first really came out and it was popularized by Kalshi, and I think October, anyone that was an early adopter it was a gold mine. And now you look back to it and it's like the competition is much more fierce. It's so much tougher, because if you were respected better or, sports trader in the space, why would you build an RFQ bot? Like that doesn't make any sense. It's a completely waste of time. But now it does. So now you have a lot more people coming to market with it. Makes you no longer can just like, I'm going to just take whatever FanDuel and DraftKings prices and give a number up and collect all this rec flow, and it's easy money. It doesn't exist anymore. It's similar with like the market making. It's like everyone thinks it's easy to market make until you actually market make, and then it's like, it's a lot tougher.
Yeah, no, market making is really tough. Known that for a while, especially because there's no real source of truth anymore in the market, with kind of penny, etc., like mostly being faked. It's a lot more complicated. And with the RFQ thing, I mean, I think that's an interesting one. Kind of goes to the, at some level, disingenuous, but that's where to trade right now on Kalish, just bar none. I mean, the fees that you're paying is just so much smaller, and that's kind of where. But Kalish is kind of incentivized to do that right now, right? Because then they can tell the story that it's not sports, it's combos, and there's all these exotic things going on Kalish that aren't sports.
Yeah, the sports volume's going down.
Yeah.
No.
It's being supplemented by exotics.
Yeah. What do you guys think of, I haven't heard you guys talk about it too much, but Polymarket US, I feel like they're in kind of an interesting spot right now where like, it feels like if you guys come in, you'll kind of take their lunch and they're just going to get boxed in, because right now they're kind of in between like, oh, we're low fee Kalshi, but Kalshi kind of seems like they already won. And there's like a clear lane for like a sports focused thing, which is kind of what they started. But I mean, if you guys get to market first and have like sufficient money, they're going to be in big trouble. Do you think they just get boxed out of the US right now?
I like the way you're thinking. That I like that a lot.
From your lips to God's ears. I think what they're finding is that it is impossible to support two liquidity pools, two nearly identical products, right? Like they need to be all in on the offshore or the domestic product. And it's just really tough to split your attention into at their scale, right? Because they're talking about a company that's raised a $15 billion valuation. And it's just kind of embarrassing to have this sort of beta US facing thing and this like wink nudge, like, well, you should maybe just use the offshore, but then also try to be onboarding customers. So I think they're in a messy spot. That being said, they have piles of cash, and sometimes throwing money at problems makes it go away. And they've got a couple hundred really smart people working there. And, I'm not like declaring victory over Poly USA by any means. And then I do think though that you're right that like I pump my fist every time I see a new non-sports product come on the regulated exchanges, and so like these perps that are tied to equities, if these are approved and you start seeing these on Kalshi and there are more and more non-sports categories that are really succeeding, to me that I think they don't want to be pushing the sports product and they want the sports number to go down, right? That's why they're being disingenuous about the exotics. And the more that happens, the more it's like, okay, like you said, like this lane opens up, right? About maybe they just kind of let us own sports because it's not good for their brand and business long term. So that's what I more or less hope happens.
Man, I love this.
Yeah.
I love hearing this. And then if we just get the coin flip our way, man, life could be good.
Life is good, man. Life is good today. No, I think that line makes sense, and I think that it's really kind of a question of how much prediction markets are allowed to scope out in this period. But yeah, it seems like they're in a really weird spot right now, where kind of to your point, I still think all the volume is in sports. I mean, if you want to argue that they're now going to start doing equities up, down, and that type of stuff, like, might as well just call it a casino at that point. But no, because I think like sports and prediction markets, I think there's something very like beautiful about the idea that you're predicting the future, and that's like different from like predicting like a roulette wheel. And I think like the structure of that is very true, and it should be regulated differently. And I think it like teaches people something about the world, which is like, okay, like you think you're so smart when you get in the sports betting market. Like especially guys, it's like, oh, the Panthers should never be +7 against the Browns. And then you start betting more and more and you're like, all right, like, fuck, like maybe
Vegas knows, dude.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it kind of teaches people to be humble about their opinions in a way that they wouldn't if they're just playing blackjack. So I think that there's some actual societal benefit that's not really hit on. I think the story about predicting the future better, like, maybe is true, but there's no liquidity in these markets that mostly people want.
I'm curious, like, I like to listen to a lot of these talk shows, like these sports. Like, I'm a fan of Stephen A. Smith. I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
And I enjoy listening to those, but I never really hear. Maybe I'm not like an avid watcher of it, but I do enjoy the clips and whatnot. I never see like, oh, I think the Browns are going to beat the Panthers here. Then someone retort with, well, the market says they're 30%, or like, they're a big underdog. Like, why are you so confident? Do you ever think that'll like shift into common culture where people accept the fact that like, if you're so smart, why aren't you, on a yacht with a, or whatever, and it made all this money?
Yeah, and I think that kind of hits the nail on the head is what I think Polly has hit up very well, and kind of what we always thought. I mean, we obviously wanted to focus on sports, but like the news is just changing probabilities, right? And all news can just be reflected as like, oh, like the odds of war has changed this much. That's why this event is relevant. And I really do think like the future of consuming news is probably intertwined with prediction markets pretty heavily. The problem is that they're selling it kind of as a panacea, where it's like this market with like $3,000 in traded volume is now like an arbiter of like what truth should be. And so like the tricky thing is like, can you really get these markets to the point where they're not marketing fluff? Because all these kind of exotic markets right now feel like marketing fluff, and they don't actually predict the world that well. Like maybe you could argue like they're a little better, but like unless there's real volume behind it, it's not really predictive. And then it kind of goes to one level deeper. Like in order to really get predictiveness, you need insider trading, because then the markets will be really accurate, but then it's also illegal. And so like that's like this weird tightrope that has to be walked right now, that there's no real clean answer to. Is if you want these markets to be valuable and predictive to like an everyday person, but you're gonna like have these really strong guards against insider trading, like it's kind of almost incompatible. There's not at that, and that kind of goes to where they're reverting to like just the story is like every market is a good prediction, which it's kind of true. And I do think it's better than news. Like there's a low bar for alternatives, but
I'm going to push back a little bit. I'm not so sure you need insiders to get like better than what we currently have is like probabilities, because you just need an incentive. Like if I'm trying to figure out if a stock is going to beat earnings or not beat earnings, something I could do is like I could pay people to camp out at their stores, check customer data. This is all very public information. You're allowed to do all of this. But if the payout is going to be a $3,000 volume traded market, I'm not going to do that. But if I'm just using that as an example, if I can make millions of dollars with a correct prediction that's better than the market, I'm now incentivized to invest heavily and get more accurate numbers. So I don't know. Yes, of course, insiders is always going to be more accurate. I mean, they have the truth at their fingertips, but you can get pretty close to it with public information, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that just to double click on that one time really quick, I feel like the problem you run into is the more volume you have in these markets, the more you're incentivizing insider trading.
Fair.
And so you can't get one without the other really. But I mean, you can maybe if you get really good policing on stuff. But overall, I agree with you. I think it's a low bar to beat what we have. The problem is to take a next level, you're just incentivizing more and more of that. And it's hard problem solve.
True.
I think you touched on something important earlier, though, that early prediction market evangelists did not anticipate, which is the aesthetics of the whole thing. A lot of people just think it's gross to be profiting off this stuff, which, if you're like a highly decoupling, mathy person, you're like, well, a journalist who writes a story, that's also how they make their living, right? Like, what's the difference? But there's just something about, anticipating a drone strike and making a few grand off of it that makes some people sick to their stomach. And if that doesn't go away, does it just put the products in the crosshairs of regulators? I think I bring up drone strikes. Those markets are basically gone from Polymarket now, and I don't think they're coming back. Right? Like you do see some adaptation to the aesthetic issues in real time, but how widespread is the opposition to that?
Yeah, and I think that's just a packaging problem. Like you can correlate drone strikes to like different things. I mean, I don't know off the rip what would be the best comparison, but you can run markets that are highly correlated to drone strikes, I think, that are like easier for people to swallow. But yeah, I agree.
Well, they do that with like public appearance markets, right? Like Joe Biden to make a public appearance in August 26th. People know what that means.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Chris just put it together.
I never thought about that, to be honest with you.
No, those are kind of gross markets too. All right, Zach, thank you so much for joining us, man. It's really nice to talk to you on
Wait,
this,
wait,
on this
wait, wait.
beautiful spring morning. Wait,
One
Go ahead.
last question. I know you're not typically a market maker, but we always like to ask this question. What is the most expensive mistake you've made? It could be building your product or anything like that. And what's the most expensive mistake you've made?
Yeah, I'll go at the time because everything's relative. But when we were starting out, like we were like scraping odds for someone to market make, and there was an injury that happened, and our line just kept infinitely like reseeding on that number, and we got crushed. And that's kind of the pulp thing. We didn't do pulp, but it's.
If you had been using,
so I'd say just market makers break.
if you had been using OpticOdds, you probably wouldn't have had this solution.
I mean, we're in like 2021, so I think I don't know if OpticOdds was around, but
fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think like maybe if we were using OpticOdds at the time, but I think like we were also trying to do too much when we started. Like we allowed people's orders to follow Pinnacle, and like that was like a whole separate thing. So we were just kind of like just armchair, like just throw stuff at the wall kind of guys to try to get people to make offers, and a lot of it didn't
that's a
work,
great way to be.
but-
You can't be upset with yourself for trying everything that you can think of.
Yeah, you miss every shot you don't take.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right,
All right.
Zach, thank you very much for joining us today, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure. Good to
Talk again soon.